There are moments in history when a single piece of paper, creased, worn, and stained with the fingerprints of love and sorrow, becomes more powerful than speeches, parades, or even war. This is one of those moments. It was a quiet evening in Ouagadougou. The sun had just disappeared beneath the horizon, casting a golden farewell over the dusty rooftops. In the presidential residence, the lights were dimmed. Silence hung heavy, disturbed only by the scratching of a pen on paper. Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's youngest leader, a man both loved and feared, praised and persecuted, sat at a simple wooden desk, writing. Not a speech, not a directive, not a military order, but a letter to his mother, the woman who had once cradled his tiny hands and told him, "Be brave, my son, but never forget your heart. Ma chère maman, if you're reading this, I might already be gone. Gone not just from the halls of power, but from this world. I know these words will wound you, and for that, I beg your forgiveness. But there are truths I need to share with you. Truths that can no longer stay locked inside me. You gave me life, but you also gave me courage. I remember your hands, rough from the fields, calloused from years of sacrifice, yet always warm when they held mine. You told me that dignity is worth more than gold, that silence in the face of injustice is a betrayal not only of others, but of ourselves. When I became a soldier, I wore your voice like armor. Every order I gave, every battle I fought, I asked myself, would she be proud? But Mama, this path, this burden, it became heavier than I imagined. At this point in the letter, Traoré's handwriting reportedly faltered. The ink smudged, not from carelessness, but from tears. He had faced rebel gunfire. He had stared down international betrayal. But nothing had prepared him for the torment of telling his mother that he might never return home. They have tried to silence me, Mama, with threats, with bribes, with bullets. When they couldn't buy me, they tried to break me. But you raised me too well for that. They call me radical. They call me dangerous. They say I dream too much and love my people too fiercely. But is it dangerous to want our children to grow up without fear of war? To want our land to feed us, not foreigners? To want to sleep at night without the sound of helicopters and the smell of betrayal in the air? I do not regret the path I walked. What I regret is not having more time to sit at your feet one last time, to hear your stories, to lay my head in your lap and remember what it felt like to be just your son. Not a president, not a soldier, just your little boy who chased goats and dreamed of becoming someone. I tried to write this many times before, but each time I couldn't find the words. How do you say goodbye to the woman who gave you everything? If they come for me, Mama, if I vanish like so many before me, know this, I did not die for power. I did not die for praise. I died because I loved you, and I loved this land too much to see it enslaved again. Please do not cry long. Plant a tree for me, one that grows strong, tall, and free. Let the children sit beneath its shade and learn that their blood is not cheap, that they are heirs to a fight for dignity, and that their voices matter. And if you ever hear wind rustling through the leaves, and it sounds like my voice whispering your name, maybe it is. Maybe a part of me stayed behind, watching over you. Je t'aime, Mama. Pour toujours. Ton fils. Ibrahim. The letter was folded carefully, sealed with wax, and placed in the hands of a trusted aide. Hours later, Ibrahim Traoré disappeared from public view. No official statement, no final press conference, no grand announcement, just silence. Whispers filled the air. Rumors of betrayal, foreign involvement, possible escape, or worse, assassination. But through it all, the only undeniable proof of his heart, his humanity, and his unbreakable bond with his mother was that letter. It made its way to her small village home, where she received it with trembling fingers and tear-filled eyes. The world may never know the full truth of his disappearance, but in that letter, we see the truth of who he was. Not just a president, not just a revolutionary, but a son, a dreamer, a man who chose love and sacrifice over comfort and safety. To this day, many say Ibrahim Traoré lives on, In the songs of freedom sung by his people, in the silent defiance of young African leaders rising from the shadows, and in every mother's prayer that her son will be brave, but never forget his heart.
But the story, it didn't end with the letter. That letter was only the beginning. In the days that followed Ibrahim Traoré's disappearance, a strange stillness settled across Burkina Faso. A silence that wasn't peace, but something deeper, like the breath the earth takes before it cries. Streets once filled with chants and defiance grew quiet. Radio stations aired endless patriotic songs. Social media went dark in places. His people, waited, watched, and feared. And yet, somewhere in the countryside, far from the capital's concrete and cameras, an old woman sat on her porch. Traoré's mother. Her hands gripped the letter as if it were his fingers. She read it each night by oil lamp, whispering the words back into the dark as if he might hear her somehow. Je t'aime, mama. Pour de jours. She didn't weep in public. She didn't speak to journalists or crowds. But neighbors say they would see her talking to the wind, her eyes closed, her lips trembling with silent prayers. One day, she walked into the bush with a young boy from the village and planted a tree, just as her son had asked. A baobab. From ancient, resilient. But the nation wanted more than a letter. They demanded truth. Was it the military that took him? Was it a foreign hand, cloaked in diplomacy and oil contracts? Was it someone from within his own circle? Theories erupted like wildfires. Some believed he was assassinated quietly in a bunker beneath the city. Others believed he had staged his own vanishing, retreating into the Sahel to rally loyal fighters for a coming storm. There were whispers of coded messages, radio frequencies broadcasting an unfamiliar voice in Fulfulde late at night. Graffiti began appearing across Ouagadougou. Il est vivant. He is alive. Traoré reviendra. Traoré will return. Months passed. A video leaked, grainy, barely audible. A man in shadow. A voice hauntingly familiar. You can silence a man, but not his mission. You can erase a name, but not a cause. It went viral overnight. The people erupted. Schools chanted his name again. Markets played the video on loops. In villages, elders gathered around small radios to listen in awe. The regime, if you could still call it that, scrambled. Crackdowns returned. Curfews were declared. But something had already awakened. Something born not of politics, but of love. The love of a son for his mother, and a people for their land. And as the tree his mother planted grew, so too did the movement. It wasn't built in parliament halls or foreign embassies. It rose in silence, in dusty classrooms where students scribbled Traoré lives on notebooks. In mosques and churches, where prayers for peace turned into calls for justice. In the hearts of farmers who refused to sell their land to faceless corporations. In the defiance of young soldiers who laid down their weapons and said, this is not what he wanted. They called themselves les héritiers. The heirs. Not of power, but of purpose. And then, the second letter surfaced. No one knew how it reached the people. It wasn't broadcast on TV. It wasn't published in the newspapers. It appeared, handwritten, photocopied, and passed from hand to hand like a sacred relic. To those I've left behind. If you found this letter, then know, my disappearance was not the end, but a pause. A necessary silence so that others might speak louder. My name is not important anymore. But the truth is, I am not alone. There are others like me. Across Africa. Brave. Willing to give everything. We are not waiting for permission. We are not asking for help. We are building something that cannot be bought, cannot be bombed, cannot be broken. A future owned by those who live in it. Do not look for me in the cities. Do not look for me in power. Look for me in the eyes of the children planting trees. In the voice of the woman refusing to sell her land. In the hands of the youth raising books instead of guns. The world may forget my face. But it must remember our dream. If I never return, know this, I died free. Not because I escaped chains, but because I refused to wear them. To my mother, if you read this, tell them I smiled in the end. Tell them I smiled. And perhaps that was his gift. Not martyrdom. not fear, but that quiet, courageous smile. A reminder that even as nations bleed and borders burn, the human soul, when anchored in love, cannot be crushed. Today, in classrooms across Burkina Faso, that letter is read aloud each year on the day of his disappearance. They call it La Journée du Fils perdu, the day of the lost son. But he is not lost. Not really. Not in the memory of his mother. Not in the roots of that baobab tree. Not in the pages of those letters. Because Ibrahim Traoré was not just a man. He became a message, a vow, a whisper carried on the wind. And every time it passes through the trees, his mother closes her eyes and smiles. Mon fils, tu vis encore. My son, you still live.